The United States has circulated a draft UN Security Council resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire linked to the release of hostages in the Gaza Strip. During a visit to Saudi Arabia, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken emphasized the need to protect Gazan civilians and provide humanitarian aid. The draft resolution is an about-face for the U.S., which last month vetoed a call at the UN for such a truce. Blinken is now on to Egypt, and then on Friday will continue on to Israel. Here's what Blinken had to say to a Saudi media outlet. We actually have a resolution, he said, that we put forward right now that does call for an immediate ceasefire tied to the release of hostages, and we hope very much that countries will support that. For more on this, we can talk now to journalists Balig Sladeen in Tel Aviv and Kareem el-Gawhary in Cairo. Kareem, to you first, this shift in the U.S. position on a ceasefire in Gaza, how is that likely to be seen in the region, particularly in Egypt, where Antony Blinken is holding talks today?
Well, I think the hope is that this will give some impetus. It will boost the ceasefire negotiations that are going on, of course, in the background. We know that there's a basic agreement of a 6-week ceasefire in exchange for releasing hostages, 40 hostages, and then in exchange releasing the 20 or 30-fold of Palestinian prisoners from Israeli prisons. But of course, there are a lot of disagreement still, and this is the hope that this new U.S. initiative will boost this. There is differences. The difference, one of them is like Hamas is demanding a list with hostages that are still alive. Hamas is refusing it. Hamas, on the other side, is asking for to pick the names for the Palestinians who are released from Palestinian prisons. They ask for at least 100 of them with life sentences. Israel is refusing that, and on the other hand, is asking that possibly to deport some of the released Palestinian prisoners to third countries. And finally, there is, of course, the hope that there will be further ceasefire and further releases, but Hamas is connecting this to a permanent ceasefire, to an end of the war. And that is, of course, something Netanyahu is refusing because of his objective to destroy Hamas. So despite of this change of the UN positions, there is still a lot of work, still a lot of disagreement in these negotiations.
Now, Balig in Tel Aviv, what about Israel? How is Israel likely to react to this push by the U.S.?
Making a huge deal of this statement by Blinken here in Israel, and I do understand why. What we have for now is a statement by Blinken and an interview with the Saudi media saying that the U.S. issued a proposal to the UN Security Council of the state on the basis of an immediate ceasefire tied to the release of the hostages. We didn't see the details of that proposal yet. The issue here is less about the ceasefire being immediate or not, but whether it's a permanent ceasefire, something that wouldn't be acceptable in Israel. And I honestly don't think that the U.S. would ever call for such a thing. Secondly, when Blinken's saying it's tied to the release of the hostages, does he mean that a ceasefire would be an unconditional release of the hostages? Because if that's the case, in Israel, that would be 100% for it. Something that I don't imagine Hamas accepting, even if the UN Security Council proposal passes. And lastly, Blinken's saying that this UN resolution proposal will send a strong message. I see three parties here getting this message. The first two are, of course, Hamas and Israel that engage right now in the talks in Doha, and such a proposal would put pressure on them to accept the terms of the negotiations. But thirdly, and maybe I'm not here to talk about the U.S. politics, but it's definitely a message also to the Democratic voters ahead of the election saying, here we are pushing for a ceasefire as you're demanding in Gaza.
Kareem, tell us more about the situation in Gaza right now. It sounds like the need for food assistance there has become absolutely critical.
Well, I mean, let's not stay with anecdotal evidence. I mean, we have a clear statement by WFP, the World Food Organization, that famine is imminent between now and May. And they don't say this lightly. There's clear indicators when the UN is announcing an imminent famine or a famine, and some of it is the insecurity of food, the situation of insecurity of food in Gaza. The other one is the malnutrition of children. So WFP decided that it's the time now to announce that we are in imminent of famine. People in Gaza are starving to death right now. The WFP Executive Director Cindy McCain is saying by a man-made hunger and malnutrition crisis. She is saying that there's a very small window left to prevent an outright famine, and to do that we need immediately and full access to the north. That means through Israel. And if you wait until famine has been declared, it's too late. Thousands more will be dead, says the head of WFP.
Kareem, thank you very much. That was Kareem el-Gawhary in Cairo, and in Tel Aviv we were speaking with Balig, Sladeen. Thank you very much to you both.